as chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. Again, this is our Global Entrepreneurship Week. This week there are 40,000 events going on in 200 countries that about 10 million people attended. But as I told you yesterday, out of 200 countries, I, as chairman, chose to be here in Nigeria, and I could not be happier that I made that decision. It has been a wonderful experience. I just have to add one more thing, because entrepreneurship, part of it is about wanting it and doing the work that other people won't. I mentioned that I have this wall at home where I write things down that I believe in, and I wrote one day that everybody wants to be successful just until they find out what that takes. Okay, they won't commit the work. But you know what happened here in Nigeria yesterday? I came back after all the events were over. I came into this room, and about 60 people in the back of that room, we gathered chairs and we sat in this empty room. I sat with 60 Nigerian entrepreneurs for 3 hours on our own to talk about entrepreneurship. You gotta want it to make change, and Nigerians want it. So all of you who spent the afternoon with me, thank you for caring enough about yourselves and your country to spend your afternoon.
Sacrifice. That is exactly what entrepreneurship is about, and that is what it did. But for you to be chairman, Mr. Jeff, there has to be this great qualification behind you. And for me, I always say, the qualification for entrepreneurship is failure. We failed in many aspects of our lives. That became a lesson, that became knowledge, and it becomes inspiration for many. Tell us, Mr. Chairman, what stood out for you? Like, which particular failure that do you still remember that inspires people more? Please share with us.
Sure. So obviously we were very blessed that some of our startups worked. The one that you guys know is Booking.com, which is the company that we turned into a multi-billion-dollar global company. But along the way, when you see people that have been successful, you don't see their failures, because we're not out talking about that, and that's not what I get interviewed about. But they're all there, right? And so I will share with you what you said, the lesson. I've done 8 companies, and 2 of them failed miserably. And the biggest lesson I learned that was a driver for me for a failure was we were selling a product to stay-at-home mothers. It was for housewives. Here's the problem. None of us were stay-at-home mothers, right? Even the women at my company were working. So how are we building a product for somebody that we are not? And that was the failure. It's for the same reason, right, that I tell people, if you want to do business in Nigeria, you better do what I'm doing. You better go spend your time with Nigerians. If you want to do business anywhere in the world, you have to spend time out of your office and where your customer is. I'll tell you, one time I got asked to address the United Nations on the state of global entrepreneurship. And the question was, what can we do to help? And I actually said something. I thought they were going to shoot me on the spot. I said, I'm not sure you can help because you're not willing to do the one thing you need to do to really help entrepreneurs. And they said, what? And I said, you're not willing to get dirty. And they said, what does that mean? I said, if you don't go to the villages, if you're not in the dirt in the village with the entrepreneurs, you don't know how to help them. I made that same mistake with customers. I sat in my office, designed a business for somebody that I wasn't. We failed, we shut down the business, but then I started calling some of the mothers. And I said, hey, if you don't mind, I'm the CEO of a company. I saw that you looked at my products, but none of you bought anything. What did I do wrong? And that was what I should have done first. The mothers told me, if you want to serve me, you better get to know me. This is my life, these are my needs, and this is how you should talk to me. I did all of that wrong.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that's the lesson you get from your business, that the market will teach you what it wants. Funny how we think we give the market the product, but your customers will actually give you the product.
Yeah, you need to quit being blinded by your own brilliance. The problem some entrepreneurs have is if you're successful, you suddenly think you're smart. As soon as you think you're smart, you're on a downward path. Okay, every day is a learning experience, and the only opinion that matters is the customer, not yours.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for him, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the theme for this event is Beyond Boundaries, Poverty Eradication Through Entrepreneurship. I want to ask you this. You've traveled. If there's a man we've seen around the world, it's you. How far have you seen poverty? How far have you seen poverty? Is it like in Africa alone? Is it in Asia alone? Or do you really agree that poverty is across the world?
Yeah, in fact, that video really touched me emotionally, and it is the reason that we created the Global Entrepreneurship Network, right? We created something because of the fact that, and I know that I mentioned this, actually, I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday because I was kind of sitting up here rambling, but one of the things, there was a day, if I'm repeating this, I'm sorry, but there was a day where I was watching a story about poverty. Actually, I was also watching a story, to be honest, it was a story about abused women. And when this news story ended, I felt very sorry for these poor women who were living in abuse. And I said something that everybody in this room has said. I said, they should help those women, right? When I was watching that, I said, they should help those women. And all of a sudden, I stood up and I had a realization. And I wrote the 4 letters on my wall that are the reason I'll never retire and I'll never stop coming to visit like I'm doing now. What I wrote on the wall is, there is no they. They don't help those women. They don't feed those children. As I said yesterday, you do. And I realized it's me, right? It's us. Poverty is everywhere. And as I've traveled the world, I have worked with entrepreneurs in more than 100 countries, personally gone like I did yesterday, and visited in those countries. And in that process, you see poverty everywhere in the world. And like the video said, there's poverty in the US that American citizens that live in the same city don't even know the way people are living across town there. So how do we get out of poverty, right? And I believe that the solution is teaching people how to help themselves. So entrepreneurship is just the tool set. The goal is not to be an entrepreneur. The goal is to teach people how to help themselves. The best toolkit that we can strap around our belt and go to work is the skill set of entrepreneurship. So our job is to tell people how to get out of poverty, not by feeding them, but by teaching them how to produce food, how to sell food, how to distribute food, and giving them the resources they need to produce that food where they live.
Thank you very much, Les. I appreciate that. Yeah, this will be the last one. Well, I said earlier that you're the Pope to every entrepreneurs across the world. It is a huge privilege for me to sit right next to you. And if you were a Pope, I was going to say, pray for us right now. And since you ain't a Pope, I'm going to say, please bless us as entrepreneurs. Say a word to us that you're going to say right from Akure, which is a blessing for this state, and we're going to launch it to the rest of the world. Your presence here alone got a lot of viewers across the world watching this right now, streaming this. And what's your final message, your words of blessing that you don't just release to entrepreneurs in this room, but from Akure to the rest of the world? Bless us with your words. Thank you.
Sure. So interesting that what you said before was, by the way, I am going to pray for you, but while I'm praying, I'm going to come over here and try to teach you and help you, right? The prayer is important. Prayer is important. Action is more important. But let me tell you what drives action, because you mentioned that failure was one of the qualifications. And so I'm going to end, and you'll be surprised, I'm going to tell you a story. I went after the success of our companies like Priceline and Booking and Ubid. I rewarded myself. I feel kind of bad saying this. I bought a Ferrari. I bought a race car. Okay, and one day I went out to take a drive in this car. And I was busy thinking about a lot of things, and I made a big mistake. I didn't check the gas tank. So I got in this 200-mile-an-hour giant engine Ferrari race car. I was driving along, and it stopped. And I was sitting on the side of the road because I was out of gas. And while I was sitting there out of gas in this big, expensive engine, a very basic car drove past me. He's going to be on time where he's going in a very basic, simple car with a full tank of gas, and he waved at me and kind of smiled, right? There's the big guy in his big car stuck on the side of the road. I'm going to go to work. And I sat there and I thought that even if you have a race car, if there's no fuel in the tank, you ain't going anywhere. And the fuel in the tank is passion. What I realized is in the business world, many times the people with all the resources still don't do anything. The differentiator is your passion. And that's why I want to say, I've been telling people across all of our 200 countries the fact that all those young people in the back sat with me for 3 hours sweating in this room to learn about entrepreneurship. That is the fuel that changes the country. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together